Shedeur Sanders just joined a list of NFL legends, and it barely made a dent in the Browns' sideline confidence. In his third start, Sanders achieved what no Cleveland QB had done since 1950, putting up numbers that rival elite rookies in the Super Bowl era. But when the game reached a critical two-point conversion, he was pulled in favor of a trick play. That moment, choosing strategy over trust, drew raised eyebrows across the league. In a sport where breakout moments define careers, the Browns chose doubt. That's not just bad football, it's bad messaging. A historic performance should solidify a quarterback's place, not turn into a footnote beneath organizational missteps. The conversation from Sharpe and Johnson presses a bigger issue.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
If teams don't back their stars when it counts, especially those defying the odds, what does that say about their priorities? Sanders' rise deserves a franchise that believes in him when it matters most, not one that caves to second-guessing under pressure. You could feel the energy shift. Everyone watching, fans, analysts, players, felt it in real time. Shedeur Sanders was putting together the kind of game quarterbacks dream of in their first season. Statistically, historically, emotionally, this was one of those performances. Over 300 passing yards. 3 touchdowns through the air. 1 on the ground. A stat line not seen from a Cleveland Browns quarterback since 1950. And then, in a moment that could have sealed his breakout, his coach pulled him. Bench. With the game on the line. And just like that, the story changed. What was on track to be a career-defining win turned into a controversy that now overshadows every throw, every drive, every touchdown Shedeur orchestrated. And when Nightcap broke it all down, Shannon Sharpe went off. Rightfully so. Because this wasn't just another coaching misstep. This was a meltdown. A deliberate, baffling choice that left even seasoned pros like Sharpe and Akasinko questioning whether there was more to the story, something deeper. Something that might point to sabotage. You don't bench the guy who got you there. Not when he's playing like that. Sanders wasn't just managing the game. He was leading it. Creating momentum. Commanding the field with the poise of someone who's been there for years. That two-point conversion attempt should have been his. That was his huddle to break, his play to make, his moment to close out what he started. But Stefanski had other plans. Earlier in the game, he'd already raised eyebrows by calling for a two-point conversion way too early. It was an odd decision at the time, ignoring the safer option of kicking the extra point to tie things up. You could have chalked it up to being aggressive. A gamble. Maybe an analytics-inspired decision gone wrong. But when you pair that with the choice to remove Sanders from a high-stakes play later in the game, now you're not looking at a one-off. Now you're looking at a pattern. That's what had Sharpe and Akasinko fired up. Because this wasn't just poor game management. This felt like something else entirely. Something organizational. A coaching staff either too stubborn to pivot or too compromised to let their young quarterback succeed on his own terms. And for a player like Shedeur, who wasn't drafted in the first round, who didn't walk in with the media machine behind him, this kind of decision can define how an organization sees you. And right now, the message being sent? We don't trust you. It's not even about whether Stefanski had a backup plan or a creative play dialed up. It's about the principle. About denying your quarterback, who, again, was having a historic game, the opportunity to finish what he started. 1. Shedeur Sanders made NFL history that night. Not just Browns history. Not just rookie history. NFL history. But instead of building on that, instead of rallying behind him and letting him ride that wave, the team pulled him from the most important snap of the game. And lost. Not only was the decision baffling, it was completely ineffective. The alternative didn't work. The play failed. The momentum died. The Browns walked off the field with a loss they didn't need to take. And now, what should have been a victory lap for Sanders has turned into an exhausting debate about whether he's being set up to fail. Because at some point you have to ask, how much more does a player like Shedeur need to do to earn full trust? He's proven his arm, his legs, his leadership. He broke down a defense. He moved the ball efficiently. He ran for a touchdown. His teammates clearly believe in him. And based on his family, his background, and the way he carries himself, it's clear he's built for this spotlight. Yet the coaching staff's actions sent the opposite message. And that's where things start to get really uncomfortable. Sharpe and Johnson didn't hold back. They questioned whether this was part of a broader agenda. Maybe Stefanski didn't want Sanders to succeed too much. Maybe it didn't align with the front office's plans. Maybe the team is eyeing future draft positioning. Or maybe, as Sharpe bluntly suggested, this is about control. Protecting a status quo. Protecting an internal narrative. Because if a late-round pick like Sanders comes in and starts looking like a star, it disrupts everything. Teams like to pretend they're always acting in the best interest of the team. But sometimes those decisions reflect something else entirely. They reflect pressure. Politics. A fear of being wrong about who the franchise quarterback was supposed to be. And Shedeur? He wasn't supposed to be that guy. He was supposed to develop quietly. Learn from the sideline. Wait his turn. But he didn't. He came in and earned it. With his performance. With his poise. With his stats. He checked every box and then some. And rather than embrace that, rather than build around it, the Browns organization responded with doubt. It's hard to overstate how damaging that can be. Not just for Shedeur but for the locker room. When players see a guy ball out like that and still get sidelined, it sends a message. That no matter how well you perform, your leash is tied to something else. Your draft slot, your name, the front office's preferences. Not your performance. And that's a dangerous precedent. This wasn't just a failed play call. This was a missed opportunity to show belief. To double down on the quarterback who gave you a chance to win. Instead, the coaching staff backed away. And in doing so, they backed away from accountability. Because now it's not just about Shedeur. Now it's about the entire team. About how you move forward. How you repair trust. How you justify decisions that make no football sense. You want to talk analytics? Stats? Let's do it. Sanders was the first Browns quarterback in over 70 years to go 300-plus yards passing, 3 touchdowns and 1 on the ground. That puts him in a group of elite rookies across NFL history. You don't stumble into that kind of performance. It's not a hot hand. It's a statement. And Stefanski erased it from the end of the story. This is what Sharpe and Johnson were trying to get across. It's not just a weird call, it's a betrayal. A betrayal of the quarterback, of the fans, and of the competitive spirit. It made no sense in context. And the fact that the team still lost only highlights how unnecessary it was. So what happens now? Does Stefanski own it? Does the team change course and commit to Sanders fully? Or do they continue making decisions that raise more questions than answers? Because the next time this team is down a score with seconds on the clock, everyone will be watching. Everyone will remember this moment. The moment a coach chose control over confidence, strategy over trust, and lost. Drop a comment if you're as confused and frustrated as the rest of us. Should Sanders have had the chance to finish the game? Is this a coaching failure, or something worse? Like if you're done watching coaches sabotage momentum. Share if you believe talent should matter more than politics. And subscribe for more breakdowns of the NFL's most unhinged moments. Because if this is how the Browns treat a breakout quarterback, what are they really building? The harsh reality is this. When a quarterback plays the best game of his career, the best game of any Browns quarterback in over 70 years, and still isn't trusted to finish the job, it speaks volumes, not about him but about the system he's trapped in. This wasn't just poor judgment. It wasn't a miscommunication. It wasn't a misread. This was a decision. A calculated, deliberate call made in the middle of a game that Shedeur Sanders had carried on his back. And yet, when the lights got brightest and the stakes were highest, Stefanski took the ball out of his hands. Let's stop pretending that wasn't a statement. Because no matter what excuses the Browns front office tries to roll out, no matter how many times they say it was part of the plan, or based on matchups, the message was clear. Sanders wasn't trusted to win that game. Not because he wasn't playing well. He was playing exceptionally. Not because he lacked poise. He was one of the calmest players on the field. Not because he wasn't capable. He'd already proven that. No. He wasn't trusted because he wasn't supposed to be the guy. That's the part that stings. Organizations spend months building narratives around the players they invest in. They hype up their hand-picked QBs. They shape off-season headlines. They manage the depth chart with the precision of a PR campaign. And when someone like Sanders, low draft status, not their guy, suddenly takes over the narrative, it shakes the system. He's not the prototype. He didn't come through the expected channels. He disrupted the blueprint. And now we're watching what happens when a team doesn't know what to do with a player who's outperforming the script. Shannon Sharpe and Chad Johnson both saw through the fog. They've been in locker rooms. They know how organizational agendas work. And the words they used, sabotage, intentional, questionable motives, aren't being tossed around for drama. They're being used because this pattern of decisions demands explanation. Going for too early? When you don't need to. That's not just bad math, it's bad timing. It puts unnecessary pressure on your team and opens the door to chaos later. Which, surprise, is exactly what happened. Then comes the most egregious moment. The game's on the line and Sanders is benched for a 2-point conversion. A decision that made absolutely no football sense. He'd been accurate, decisive, mobile. His energy had been consistent all game. He'd earned the right to take that snap. But he wasn't even given the... That doesn't look like situational strategy. That looks like optics management. That looks like a team that didn't want to risk the wrong player becoming the hero. And when we say wrong, we mean wrong in their eyes, not the fans, not the analysts, not the stats. The guy they didn't expect. The one they didn't invest their draft capital in. The one they weren't prepared to market. That's the uncomfortable subtext here. Because make no mistake, Sanders did everything right. He did everything you're supposed to do to win a game, build trust, and lock down your job. And the reward was public rejection. That doesn't just hurt the player, it destabilizes the entire culture of a locker room. If you're a receiver, do you trust that your hot-handed QB is going to stay in when the game's tight? If you're a lineman, are you protecting a guy you know might get pulled on the next drive? And if you're Sanders, how do you believe the words coming out of your coach's mouth after that? The worst part? The Browns lost. All of it, the early gamble, the last-minute benching, the coaching micromanagement, led to a completely avoidable defeat. It wasn't just demoralizing. It was counterproductive. And now the Browns are dealing with the fallout. Instead of headlines about a historic rookie performance, the conversation is about coaching sabotage. Instead of a clip of Sanders leading a game-winning drive, we have clips of Sharpe and Johnson shaking their heads on nightcap, wondering if the organization even wants to win games at this point. And this isn't just a Browns problem. It's an NFL problem. How many young quarterbacks have we seen fizzle out not because of lack of talent, but because the system around them failed them? Because the coach didn't trust them? Because the team decided to manage them instead of letting them grow through pressure? What Sanders is experiencing is the kind of silent sabotage that kills careers in their infancy. The kind that doesn't show up in a box score, but shows up in hesitation, in broken confidence, in stalled momentum. And that's why this moment matters so much. Because Shedeur Sanders showed everyone what he could be. Not just a serviceable backup. Not just a developmental guy. But a starter. A leader. A franchise quarterback. And in return he got benched. What happens the next time the Browns need a big moment from their quarterback? Is Stefanski going to trust him then? Or will he overthink it again? Pull rank? Play not to lose and end up losing anyway? That's the pattern right now. And it's the one Sharpe and Johnson are trying to put a spotlight on. Because this isn't just about one player. It's about how NFL teams treat talent that wasn't expected to succeed. It's about how internal politics and draft day bias can derail promising careers before they even start. And it has to stop. If Cleveland is serious about winning, they need to look in the mirror. They need to ask why the most promising quarterback performance in decades was followed by one of the most questionable coaching decisions in recent memory. Because this isn't sustainable. You don't build a winning team by undermining the guys who are delivering. You build it by recognizing greatness, even when it shows up in ways you didn't expect. And Sanders? He showed it. In his throws. In his drives. In his stats. In his body language. He did what winners do. He gave his team a chance. The Browns didn't give him one. And here's the thing, this doesn't go away. Moments like this live forever. Not just in highlight reels that should have been. Not just in a loss column that could have said win. They live in locker room whispers. In film sessions where eyes dart around the room. In the questions players don't ask out loud but feel deep down. What do I have to do to be trusted around here? Shedeur Sanders gave them everything. He gave them production. He gave them efficiency. He gave them fire. He gave them hope. He gave them wins on the table. And they benched him when the moment mattered most. That's not something you just fix with a Monday press conference. That's not something you smooth over by saying, we like the look we got. No, this was a failure in trust. And trust, once broken in the NFL, isn't easily repaired. It fractures locker rooms. It festers in QB rooms. It lingers in the psyche of players who watched a teammate play the game of his life and still get sidelined. And no amount of spin can cover that up. Shannon Sharpe wasn't outraged for ratings. Chad Johnson wasn't baffled for entertainment. These are guys who've lived this life. Who know what it means when a coach makes a decision that spits in the face of on-field performance. They've seen this story before. Young player starts hot. Disrupts expectations. Outshines veterans. And then, benched. Neutered. Managed. They weren't just criticizing Stefanski for the sake of it. They were calling out a system that rewards control over courage. that values optics over outcomes, that punishes players for outperforming their organizational. Let's be honest, this would have never happened to a first-round pick. If Sanders had been the top quarterback taken, he wouldn't have left the field for a second. He could have thrown 2 picks and still been out there for that 2-point conversion. The leash would have been miles longer, the support louder, the trust unquestioned. But because Sanders came in through the side door, the team couldn't even let him walk through the front. That's the difference between opportunity and ownership. The Browns gave Sanders a shot, sure. But the moment he tried to own the moment, take the game, take the narrative, take the locker room, they snatched it away. And that tells you everything. They weren't ready for him to succeed this quickly. They weren't prepared for the conversation to shift from "he's developing" to "he's our guy." Because if Sanders leads that drive, converts that 2-point play and wins the game, the QB controversy becomes very real. The media pressure multiplies. The internal power dynamics shift. And you can almost feel the front office panic at that idea. That's what made the benching feel so intentional. It didn't feel like fear of failure. It felt like fear of success. Sharpe said it best. When your quarterback plays that well and still doesn't get the trust to close the game, it's not about football anymore. It's about politics. About control. About who the organization wants to be the face of the franchise, and who they're uncomfortable with being it. That's the ugly part nobody wants to say out loud. Because Shedeur Sanders earned that moment. The tape proves it. The stats prove it. His teammates' reactions prove it. You don't accidentally put up a stat line like his. You don't luck into multiple touchdowns and 300-plus yards. And you definitely don't scramble into the end zone for a rushing touchdown if you're scared of the moment. But the Browns blinked. They overthought. They outcoached themselves. Or worse, they protected a narrative instead of protecting a win. And now the fallout is bigger than just a botched play call. It's about trust, development, and direction. Where do you go as a team when the guy who gave you the best shot to win can't even stay on the field in crunch time? How do you move forward in good faith when the locker room saw what happened? This isn't about fan frustration anymore. It's about leadership. And right now, it looks like leadership is missing in action. Let's break this down even further. If Shedeur had been struggling, throwing picks, missing reads, losing composure, maybe you justify pulling him. But that's not what happened. He was locked in, dialed, commanding. His stats rivaled veteran QBs. He was moving the ball, reading the defense, making decisions like a pro. That's what makes this so unforgivable. You benched the quarterback who was actively giving you a chance to win. Let that sit. They weren't trailing by 20. They weren't desperate. They were in it. Competitive. Threatening to pull off a comeback win. And Stefanski willingly pulled the plug. No trust. No belief. Just control. And in the NFL, control can be a poison. Teams that prioritize hierarchy over performance always lose in the long run. Because talent doesn't wait for permission. Greatness doesn't care about draft status. And if you don't foster that energy, if you don't recognize it and elevate it, you lose it. Fast. So now Shedeur is left holding the bag. He did everything right and still got the short end. And that leaves fans wondering, what else does he have to prove? Because based on this game, nothing. He proved it all. The poise, the precision, the potential. And still, Stefanski chose someone else. That's the real loss. Not just on the scoreboard, but in momentum, in morale, in the belief that talent will be rewarded. Because let's be honest, how do you sell the process to fans now? How do you convince anyone that the Browns are building something when the most promising performance they've had all season ended in a coach yanking the one guy who was delivering? You don't. And that's the part that stings the most. Because Shedeur didn't just earn that final drive. He deserved it. Every yard. Every read. Every touchdown. He made his case. And the Browns made their response, not yet. So now the question isn't about what Sanders can do, it's about whether the Browns will let him. And that shouldn't even be a question. And here's the uncomfortable truth, when a coach makes a move like this, it's not just about one player. It's not even just about one game. It's about setting the tone for the entire team, for the culture, for the identity of the franchise. And the tone Kevin Stefanski just set? Performance doesn't guarantee trust. Execution doesn't guarantee opportunity. Momentum doesn't guarantee leadership. You can do everything right, make history, carry your team into a winnable position, and still find yourself on the sideline when the spotlight hits. Because the game plan, the politics, is stronger than the performance. And when that becomes obvious to the locker room, you start losing more than games. You lose belief. Let's go back to what Shedeur Sanders accomplished on that field. Third NFL start. Not the first. Not the 10th. The third. And he walks out there and delivers a stat line that hadn't been seen from a Cleveland quarterback in over 7 decades. You don't fluke your way into that. That's not luck. That's talent. That's composure. That's readiness. So how do you explain pulling a player like that? You can't. Not with logic. Not with strategy. Not with analytics. The only explanation left is the one no coach wants to say out loud: control. Because if Sanders had completed that 2-point conversion, if he had led that final drive and walked off the field with a win under his belt, the Browns would have had a quarterback controversy they weren't prepared for. And not a messy one. A real one. The kind that forces organizations to rethink the entire depth chart. The kind that pushes the safe guy down the line and elevates the unexpected leader. And it's clear now, they weren't ready for that conversation. So instead of embracing the rise of a potential franchise QB, they benched him in a critical moment and called it situational football. But it wasn't situational. It was organizational. It was about managing expectations, managing headlines, managing control. And now they've got none. Because the fans aren't buying it. The analysts are tearing it apart. Former players are calling it sabotage. And Sanders? He didn't even have to say a word. His performance did the talking. The silence from the team did the rest. What happens now? That's the next chapter in this disaster. Because you can't walk this one back. You can't unbench your quarterback mid-controversy and pretend like it didn't happen. You can't gaslight the fan base into believing that pulling the most electric player on the field was a smart football decision. That moment is burned into the season. And it's going to follow the Browns until they either commit to Sanders fully or lose him completely. Because if they keep dragging their feet, if they keep making safe decisions and managing perceptions instead of just playing the best guy on the roster, they're going to kill this momentum before it ever gets a chance to become something real. And Shedeur Sanders deserves better than that. He deserves a coach who trusts him when it counts. A front office that sees what's in front of them. A fan base that knows they have something special on their hands. And right now he's got 2 out of 3. The only question is whether the Browns are willing to stop playing games and start playing football. Drop a comment below. Was Stefanski protecting a plan or protecting himself? Like if you're tired of seeing young quarterbacks benched for doing too well, share this with someone still defending that decision. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next time a team fumbles its future right in front of us. Because in this league, talent shows up fast. And if you're not ready for it, it leaves.